Oh my gosh. Of course it's 111 when I actually pressed play, which I had no idea. I was not looking at the clock at all. It wasn't planned. It wasn't like, there wasn't like some sneaky like, I'm going to start it at 1:11. Okay, I am here to talk about light language and angels per a question from a Soul Space member, Kevin. And I'm going to read the question a little bit because, just to give you all context, because I'll probably repost this to Instagram, possibly Patreon. And also, even if you're in Soul Space, I don't expect you to go looking for it and find it. It was like 3 weeks ago or something like that. I was going to hop on and do a live and then just ran out of time. So Kevin had this experience doing, I think, like a shamanic channeling class using drums. And he was like, I don't know, like wondering what this light language was that would sometimes come through him. And he got this this answer, basically, I think from like psychically he got an answer is what, I'm sorry, I'm reading it on my computer screen while I do this. The answer he got was no. So he asked, like, what is this light language that keeps coming through me? Sometimes, is it the language of the people on this planet? And the answer he got was no. It is the angel inside of you trying to communicate. And he was like, what? And then he asked, is the angel what we call a soul? And the answer he got was no, this being is separate. And he asked, do all human beings have an angel inside? And the answerer said no. And then he stopped the session because he needed to process. And later he continued the processing process. And let me see. Oh yeah, so he got a little bit of clarity. The angel inside is an angel speaking from inside of us, but they don't live in us. Are all humans capable of speaking light language? Yes, but many don't listen. They are too involved with the material world. And then he asked, can you define what angel means to you since it's a human term? And he said, he got the answer, a higher being who enforces natural law. And then the last question he asked, and then I'll get into my big, long-ass diatribe, I'm sure, all about it, is why the sound and not just putting the information in our head? And he got the answer. The sound triggers something between our mind and our soul, but he couldn't figure out what it does beyond that. And I read his question, and I was like, oh, I have some things to say about this. This has been like, that was 2022 in a nutshell for me. And I have spent 100% of my time contemplating and like opening up and receiving and like decoding the stuff that I'm getting around it. So I wanted to answer him, but I knew that it was going to be the post would be a freaking novella. It would be so long. So I was like, why don't I just hop on here in Soul Space? I haven't done it in so long. And talk about it here. Okay, so, because he was getting good information. So I'm going to share with you my perspective of all of this. And again, take what works for you, leave what doesn't. Never in any way am I ever trying to present myself as some kind of authority above your own understanding or your own intuition or anybody else's. But this is how it, this is how it resonates and makes sense within me. So last year, I started getting an awareness of angels as beings that are not the way that they are sort of surface level depicted within our culture, of being like, chicks, usually Caucasian chicks. They're not physical. So, but they're painted like white chicks in a long white robe, kind of like a Greco-Roman style with big wings, and they're sitting on clouds and often playing harps, or there are these little naked babies flying around. That was the impression of angels that I had. Plus I had all these like cheesy, like Hallmark movie impressions of angels, and like that show from a million years ago. I don't know if you remember, because I'm old. Just kidding, I'm not old. I'm 41, that's not old. But Touched by an Angel. Just kind of stuff like that, right? So I never resonated with angels at all. I thought it was like a bunch of airy-fairy fluff, that like sentimental nonsense garbage that people were into. But last year, I started getting understandings of these different tiers of consciousness, that we are inseparable from it. Now, I can't say for sure that we all have all of these multidimensional tiered aspects of consciousness accessible to us within ourselves. I think we probably don't, truthfully, but I don't know. That's a hypothesis. It's a theory. But I started to feel like we could take the analogy of the tree. That's kind of a way that is helpful for me to understand it. So it's like there's the roots of the tree, there's the trunk of a tree, there's the main branches, and then there's the branches that branch off of those main branches, and the twigs that branch off of the branches that branch off of the branches. And at some point there's leaves, there's flowers, perhaps there's fruit. You know what I mean? The whole being is the tree. The tree is the whole thing. And then furthermore, a lot of trees connect underground. Like they're, we see one tree and it's actually part of a bigger root network. So it's like the one single tree we see is all connected to all these other trees. You know what I mean? It just goes on and on and on. So a tree is a helpful analogy to understand this. I started becoming aware of this very high level of consciousness, the angelics. So last year for me was all about understanding the angelics. This year seems to be all about understanding the dragons so far. And the angelics are much more similar to that which is depicted in extra biblical books like the Book of Enoch, as well as some biblical books and other non-biblically affiliated texts. If you want to look into angelology on YouTube, this is a very interesting field of research, you could call it maybe. But they're like these beings that they are not human, they don't look like humans, nothing like that at all. Hi, Corey. And they, okay, let me see where I want to go with this. The angelics are very close to the creator level of consciousness, much closer than we are. We're very, very distant, and yet we have our own direct connection. The angelics are extremely powerful beings, and they exist not here. They don't exist here. I imagine they can perceive this realm after a fashion, but they don't exist here. They don't walk among us. However, last year I came to understand that I have an angelic aspect, and many of us do, and that there are certain people who are incarnated who literally I call it a drip down. That's the best way I can describe it. It's like their soul is part of a higher field of consciousness that we could attribute to an angelic or an archangelic field of consciousness. And they have dripped down into this human form. And when I talk about walk-ins, last year I started talking about walk-ins, and I'm continuing to feel the walk-in energy. That's really what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about an occasion where one soul swaps out, the soul you were born with, leaves this body, checks out, peace, bye, and a new soul walks in. I know some people have that experience, but what I am talking about is this process of clearing out the smaller human storied aspects of ourselves, which allows more of the higher essence that we are connected to drip down and infuse into this vessel, this avatar that we have. And so the angelics are like watchers. The angelics that have not fallen, what I understand is that they are basically they are creating, but they are creating according to God's blueprint. And they don't have free will because they're so close to God, that they're so close to Source Creator, that they don't have a much individuality, and they don't have a lot of personal will. And they are, man, I thought I was going to be able to do a really good, concise job of explaining this because it's so integrated in my mind. But when I get on here and start talking, I realize, like, oh, right, you've been thinking about this 100% of the time, and yet you have not been talking about it 100% of the time. So there's a lot of steps in between the last time I talked to anybody on here about any of this and now feels like a big gap to bridge. So the angelic beings, the ones that have not fallen, feel like they are holding a place of, how would I describe it, like utter and total harmonized resonance with the totality that is all, the oneness, that we will call God, that we will call creator or source. It's like they are the first layer of I'm even using this word wrong, but I'm just going to keep going with it, individuation, where like they become separated and have a consciousness of their own. They're like the first layer of individuation from source, yet they're so close to source that their gaze is always turned upon source, always. And it's holding this profound, powerful frequency of alignment with the God mind and the God heart. So they're place holding for all the rest of creation, like what, in religious terminology, we would call like righteousness or whatever, like a frequency that is completely surrendered to the ultimate intelligence and benevolence and magnificence of source. In like, the state of eternal light and love and like peace and well-being for all creation everywhere. Then there are a bunch of fallen angelics, and I have a whole entire, like I got this vision one time when I was doing a sound journey with Ben Carroll that I shared in, what was it? It was Understanding Entities Reptilian Edition. That's where I shared it, but I've never shared it publicly. I'm going to share it on the podcast next week. But I understood, like I saw the process of the fall, and I have come to understand myself as a fallen angel, and many of us are fallen angels, and that isn't what you would think it is. It's not like, oh, we're the bad ones that like rebelled and left God. It's more like we came down to clean up the mess that was created by an initial decision by one of the angels to take free will and turn away from God, essentially, which is not what an angel was created to do. So many of us are fallen angels, is what I'm trying to say. But it's more like you could call it, we're a drip down of an angel. We are a descended angelic consciousness. And it's almost like the angelics are completely outside of this whole holographic whatever the fuck it is, this whole game verse. Like when I go into understanding people's galactic or starseed aspects, the way it kind of looks to me is almost like, that game World of Warcraft? It's like this complex multiplayer game. It has so many different versions, so many different worlds. It's not hosted on any single server anywhere. Like different people are accessing it at different times, and they have different multiple avatars. Like I remember I had this one boyfriend who like, he thought that the idea of an awesome romantic weekend together was for me to drive to his place and then watch him play World of Warcraft. I mean, like, I don't know why I put up with that for so long. But that's how I learned about World of Warcraft. And I would watch, and he would show me his different characters. He had this like one, like crazy skeleton character. He had some like fairy elfish characters. He had multiple characters was the point. Our starseed and galactic aspects, that's kind of how it presents to me. Is like, I kind of see this whole thing as a game. very much the way that we understand video games, or the way I understand them anyway, being not a gamer. And I know for some people that really stresses them out because it makes them feel like this is all like some kind of horrible inorganic simulation like the Matrix. But for me, it feels just like a game that is a dream projection, a holographic dream projection, and that there are many worlds within this game. Many worlds and many layers within each world, many characters that we can play, and we are not one player at a time. We can switch fairly fluidly between the different characters that we are, and yet there's always kind of a checkpoint that we have to go to switch. Like, you know, like if you're playing World of Warcraft, I don't think you can just switch characters within the middle of the game, but maybe you can. I don't remember. Anyway, angels feel to me like they're outside of the game, which is why they're also called or referred to as the Watchers. And they, in a sense, created this game. But they didn't create it, like, it's almost like God created the blueprint and the raw materials, and the angels were the aspect of God that wove this whole beautiful game into existence. And then from there, consciousness, like, there's oh my God, how do I even talk about this? It all makes sense in my head. I know a lot of you, I know, because I get messages all the time from people saying, like, you feel the same. Like, it makes all sense in your head, and then you try to put it into words, and it's like, a certain portion of source became these little sparks that is us, these souls, that are the through line of consciousness that animates these different characters within these different realms. We have incarnations here on Earth because we incarnate in other realms. We don't necessarily come into a fully carnal form. It's more of like a light form, and yet it's still a character, right? So anyway, it feels to me, this is my understanding of the angelics, is that some of us, like when Kevin asked and he got the answer from his, whatever being was communicating with him, that no, not all humans have an angel within them. I agree. That's what I perceive as well. There are some of us who are being infused with that angelic consciousness. And I feel personally, and again, I'll explain on the podcast, that I very much feel like I am a seraphim. And yet I'm not saying Amy the human is a seraphim. What I'm saying is Amy the human is a leaf on a twig, on a little branch, on a bigger branch, on a bigger branch, on a bigger branch, that is a seraphim that is connected to God, if that makes sense, on the tree of everything. It's like I can remember what it means to be a seraphim, and I have for a long time, even though I didn't know what any of that meant until last year. And I think that there are many of us. I've definitely found quite a handful. Last year was a big year of angelics for me in Akashic readings. It felt like, probably a third of the readings that I was doing, people were carrying an angelic aspect. So it's like a part of us that is outside of the game, like outside of the whole game, the whole thing, that is coming into this body and infusing into this consciousness, but it's not a separate entity. It's not a separate being. It's not like some other thing is coming and occupying my space inside of my body, or some outside thing is channeling through me. It just feels like me at a much higher level, a much greater potency. And so I'm, on one hand, Amy, very normal human, very, very flawed human, And I am increasingly holding more and more angelic consciousness, which again to me just means that I'm here to clean up the fucking mess we created. Honestly, that's how it feels. It does not feel like I'm here to be a hero. It feels like shit. We accidentally made this mess. We gotta clean it up. That's the only way out. Like, oh man. I'm gonna try and save some of it for the podcast. Okay, so light language. I've wondered too, because if you recall, perhaps you do, perhaps you don't, last year I randomly in the summer got activated to start speaking light language out of what feels like nowhere. Before I honestly thought that light language was a sham. I honestly thought people were just going blah 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 and you know, being like, oh, it's a message from the Arcturians or whatever. That's actually literally what I thought. And then I woke up and was like, I was just on a ship and there was a woman talking to me, and she is what we would call an alien. It was a galactic aspect, not an angelic aspect. And she was like, it's time. You got to talk to people and you got to make intense eye contact. I'm still working on that. It's very vulnerable for me to do light language. So anyhow, and I just started pouring out of my mouth at home. Like, my daughter thought I was crazy. I was just walking around being like, hey, and she would be like, what are you saying, mommy? It was just coming out everywhere. And then I went through a very intense dark night of the soul in November and December where I was like, oh my God, the spiritual world in the New Age is so infiltrated. Oh, holy shit. There are so many of us who are legitimately having our psychic abilities activated with no grounding, no training, like full of shadow, full of trauma. It's by design. So that, and we're not even fully in our bodies because we're so traumatized and because we have all these weird feelings about being a human being, because it's been made to be a very, very painful experience for all of us. So basically what that means is it's very much like if you look at Project Montauk, you know, the use of Project Looking Glass, MK Ultra, those kind of things, essentially what they've done, I think that this awakening has always been on the docket. It's bigger than the dark actors who are also fallen angels, but they are the fallen angels who fell on purpose. Fell not to clean things up, fell to take over here. They and all of their actors, they have known that this awakening has been coming because it's bigger than them. It's bigger than any of us. And to kind of get ahead of it and use it to their advantage, they have been sort of like seeding the consciousness expansion community and the spiritual community with distorted truths, so that, and also making it seem really cool, which I totally bought into and fell for, that our psychic abilities are opening up, making us feel like, ugh, grounding, gross, boring, and, you know, like making it this exciting thing to learn without having any, grounding, I guess, like any discipline behind it is what I'm trying to say. Any deeper anchoring into like personal principled truths, so that we become open channels, open vessels, and whatever the fuck can talk through us and to us. So I became really painfully aware of that in the fall. And so then I started really questioning light language and got freaked out. And I was like, holy shit, like what is even coming through me? Am I like accidentally, you know, transmitting like deceptive stuff? And it was so, oh God, it was so intense. Anyway, after a very excruciating personal, like I am talking about a scathing level of inventory, what I came to understand is that no, light language itself is not corrupt. Most of it is coming from very beautiful, levels of consciousness, but I will give the caveat to always trust your heart, always use your discernment. There are some people, like if I'm flicking through Instagram and I start hearing light language, or YouTube, there are some transmissions where I'm just like, nope, gotta skip it. I don't know what's coming in on that file, that channeling, but I can tell, like, my aura does not want it. Does that mean that it's evil? Not necessarily. Maybe it is, but maybe it's also just not for me. And so you must use your discernment. And I ask you to apply that to me as well at all times. Always trust the truthometer and the bullshitometer in your heart, always. But what I came to understand is that light language, like when I'm speaking it, it's not a language the same way that we have earth languages. So there's not an English translation. And sometimes I have brought through, like, I can feel what is being transmitted and conveyed. And so I've brought it through and like broken it down and kind of explained it. But it's not like that. It's not like I'm speaking Italian and it has like an English translation, more or less. Do you know what I mean? What it is a frequency of like harmonics, pitch, tone, cadence, rhythm, phonetics, like a specific string of sounds that allows me to transmit information to you that bypasses the manipulation we've received in the languaging center of our minds. Because when I did that, oh my God, when I did those chakra clearings and we got to the throat chakra, holy shit, I was just like, those motherfuckers. I was incensed, like I can't even, incensed at the way that they have programmed us to, basically we're casting spells on ourselves all day, every day, and each other that keep us basically imprisoned here. Like, unless you're aware of it, it keeps you imprisoned here. The words, the insanity, the things, like, just for example, me saying that I'm struggling to take all of this information that I have in my brain and somehow parcel it up in words to deliver to you that makes sense, which again, I know is a common experience because I get so many messages of other people telling me that it's the same for them. That is your number one indication that this is not the fucking way it's supposed to work. This is not what communication is supposed to be. Newsflash, communication is actually supposed to come telepathically, and we have 3 telepathic centers. The first one being the sacral, and that is like proximal, relational, physical, like it's a physical telepathy. So you know when you're sitting with your animal or your child or somebody you love, I mean anybody, but let's just think about somebody that we love, right? Because it's more fun. You're sitting with somebody that you love and you're just like chilling together. Maybe you're at the park or the beach. Like maybe you're both lying on the beach in the sand and you're not talking to each other, but you feel each other. Or you're watching a show and you can feel that even though you're both paying attention to the show, there's this like sacral level of telepathy that's happening. I practice it with William all the time, and it's legit. Like, I'm telling you, it's an actual thing. I see the effect that happens when I drop into my sacral and I connect telepathically with him through that. The next level of telepathy is through our hearts, where we are all connected through our heart, and they've deliberately made it so that we can't, that we're so fucking traumatized in our hearts. There's also this, I call it like a Faraday cube around the heart, because when I went in to do the heart chakra clearing, I was like, oh, damn, like I can't, there's this black cube around people's heart chakras that like cuts it off basically. It's on the astral level, so, and it can definitely be removed. That's one of the benefits of the clearings that I did. But, you know, we're definitely designed, or we're programmed right from the start to not connect through our hearts in the way that we can. And then the other way that we connect telepathically is through our third eye. We are supposed to communicate telepathically through the transmission and the receipt of, like, thought images, if that makes sense. We're not supposed to use our throats to communicate. That's why it feels so clunky. I think that's why a lot of people have social anxiety, because we're all sorts of fucked up in all three of those chakras, never mind all the other ones. It makes it very hard to connect with each other, very hard to communicate. We feel like stuck within ourselves, isolated, awkward, embarrassed about ourselves. You know, like there's, oh God, it's just so intense. They've done such a number on us. Anyway, so there are things that I want to convey to you that are bigger than I can fit into words, even though, and people lovingly and wonderfully, I appreciate it so much, they tell me all the time that even though I get so frustrated at trying to communicate this in English, they tell me I'm doing a good job. And so even though apparently, according to many people, I'm doing a good job, there's still, I'm only giving you the tip of the iceberg of what I understand. And it's very hard, it's very frustrating, because I'm also like encoded with the mission. Like, it's like, it's the fucking mission to convey this all to you, to convey it somehow. It feels like if I don't before I die, then I failed. It's a very intense drive. So I literally feel like what I'm conveying to you through language is 10%, and there's 90% of the iceberg, which is the majority of the information, that I have no idea how I can possibly transmit it. And light language is one of the ways that bypasses the hijackery of the English language or any languages on earth. I think that some languages are probably very beautiful and very powerful and aligned with the heart chakra, namely probably most indigenous languages. And then also one that specifically resonates with me deeply is Gaelic languages, the Gaelic language system. But I think, all over the world, I'm sure that there they are like a light language. They are a greater reflection of the truth of everything that human beings are, and this whole realm is. So when I'm doing light language, it is information that's coming through that bypasses the sort of the left brain wiring around language and programming we've received since, we were born, and allows me to transmit the direct, undiluted frequencies and harmonics to you, and for you to receive them without needing to know exactly what it means. And I believe that many of us have this ability, the same way I believe that many of us carry like a piece of an increasing piece of that angelic drip down consciousness. Okay, now I'm trying to think, like, do I ramble for another 5 minutes, or do I just save it all for the podcast? I think I'll just quickly talk about the dragons, because it's very exciting. I think I finally figured it out. The dragons also started coming through to me last year, and I was like, what the fuck? These are mythological creatures. Like, some people, when I talk about it, they're like, I've always been drawn to dragons. I have not always been drawn to dragons. I mean, I thought they were cool, but I just, it wasn't something that, I've like had a lifelong draw to. It only started to come through to me last year. And I started feeling it in other people. And I was like, I don't know what it means. But you have dragon energy. Males have dragon energy and females have dragon energy. And it's extremely powerful. It's like people who carry the dragon energy, from what I am understanding, they are coded to hold way more power than the average human being. And I also want to say too, I feel like I want to clarify, because I never want this to come across like some of us are super special and the rest of you are all just shitty normal humans. It's not like that. It's that many souls have been trapped here and have been basically, the whole way that this false matrix prison system works is that they use trauma-based mind control, exactly like MK Ultra, and they deliver trauma to us like from birth to death. And then they also discourage us from having any time or any support to look inward and process that trauma. So then we just get lodged with a bunch of unprocessed trauma. And it causes distortion in our fields, distortion in the geometric patterns of our physical bodies, our emotional bodies, our mental bodies, and our spiritual light bodies. And we then, like, if we haven't processed our trauma at the point that we die, this is what we call karma. It's like that, the charge around that trauma, it's like, to me, karma isn't about like you were a bad person in another life and now you must pay for it. It's like you experienced trauma and you were not successful in processing it and integrating it. So when you died, there was a big emotional charge built up around that trauma, and it like the distortion it created in your like spiritual and astral body, like in your soul consciousness field, prevented you from getting out, like out of the net that they have cast over this realm, out to the, you know, the outside of the game where you can just like reincarnate from with like a blank perspective, if that makes sense. So instead of getting out, those people, most humans, the souls that are animating most humans, end up getting sort of recycled back here, and they go through another life where they become further fractured and fragmented and, you know, have more trauma, and again, like, usually don't process it by design, not because these souls are stupid or anything like that, or immature, or like new souls or whatever. It's because it's designed that way, that when you're in a human body, like, think about it, we're not taught emotional intelligence, we're not taught how to like process trauma. So what happens is the soul gets more and more and more fragmented, and pieces of itself are kind of walking around like, it's almost like having dementia, like where you remember these weird little disjointed whispers of the moreness that you are, but it's so fleeting and you have no idea how to access it. And meanwhile, you know, you have to, you gotta go to work because you gotta pay your bills, and you know, you gotta do the things and the hey and the ho and all the stupid shit that they get us to do here that is not a reflection of the actual reality at all on any level. And those souls, so most of those human beings that we rudely call NPCs, I genuinely do not think that they are NPCs. I honestly think that they're just traumatized. They're so intensely traumatized and fragmented and fractured through that trauma. If you haven't listened to the Expanding Reality podcast episode with Colleen Turner on it yet, definitely listen, because she does the best job at explaining NPCs that I've ever heard anybody do. She did an amazing job, and that whole conversation was the shit. It was so good. Anyway, those people, which is the majority of human beings, they are not coded to hold very much power. They can't. So we have to stop being judgmental and angry with them and impatient, because they can't. They can't. It's like asking somebody to, like asking somebody who's basically like a paraplegic to fucking like keep up in the marathon, like get out of their chair and run along with us and keep up with us. It's so dismissive and it's rude. And nor am I suggesting either that like all these souls are victims, all these people are victims, and like we can see them in their strength and their resilience, and also recognize that they are like, they just need our help. That's what I'm talking about. Like, I know I'm part of the cleanup crew. I fucking know that I'm part of the cleanup crew. I know they need my help. I know it's not because I'm better than them or I'm more evolved or anything like that. It's just part of me is totally literally outside of the game. And so I have like, it's like I have cheat codes basically, and they don't have the cheat codes. And I don't want to hog the cheat codes to myself and just manifest like a dope, you know, baller lifestyle for myself and just be like, fuck you all. Like enjoy living and shit. That just doesn't do anything for me. I want to use the cheat codes to like get everybody out. So dragons are coded to hold an immense amount of power. Immense. Like, I actually think that's what all of our superhero movies are about. Truly, I honestly believe that it's us. That's where we're headed in the very near future. And that, like, you know, they always have to tell us what's going on. Plus, there are probably inside actors within all of the industries that are, like, also seeding truth into, you know, all of our, all the things, you know, our works of fiction, etc., our media, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I actually believe that there are humans that are coded to have superpowers activated. They're having it happen right now in real time. And they're like the counterpart to the angels, but not in a way where dragons are evil and angels are good. Because as I said, there are fallen angels. I believe that I'm a fallen angel. I believe I voluntarily dove down here to clean this mess up. And that also doesn't mean that I'm perfect or I'm above it. It's like when you come down here, you're here. You cannot be out of it. You're in it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I use plastic toothbrushes that end up in the landfill, that end up in the ocean, in a gigantic plastic island. Like, I'm part of the problem, 100%. The dragons are the counterpart to the angels insofar as the angelic aspect is the aspect that holds the frequency of, as I said at the beginning of this long-ass ramble, it holds the frequency of like total surrender and alignment to the will of God, the divine, supreme, intelligent heart and mind of the creator, the mother, father, creator, and then the level of creator that is even above, like the masculine, feminine polarity that is represented here in all, you know, all levels of nature. So the angelic aspect is very actually passive. The angelics have a lot of power, but their power, our power, is more in spinning fields of light is what I call it. So it's the activation of the heart star chakra. I lovingly refer to it as our rainbow crystalline snowflake mandala. It's a beautiful field of exquisite geometric perfection that radiates out on the horizontal plane from our heart, and it purifies the fields around us. As I practice working with it, my field of light gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I watch it literally influence people all around me while I'm just doing regular shit like going to the fucking bank and grocery shopping, holding this field of light. It's a lot of work. It requires a lot of consciousness and intention for me to do it. But that's one of the things that angelics do. We also, we have a healing frequency. It's like we hold frequencies of grace, truth, love, like, I'll call it perfection. What I mean is healing, but I mean like perfection. Like, it's a field of light that, and a frequency that can, that's why I call it healing, because it will repattern just passively, just by default, repattern that which is distorted. It's a frequency that dispels illusion, but it's all gentle. It's very powerful as well, but it's this passive, gentle kind of power where all you're doing is just letting that radiate out of you and stream through you. And you're just learning to hold more and more and more of it and believe in yourself more and more and more within it, so that you're not, cutting it off at the knees because you don't believe that you're worthy to, have this much power or whatever. But it's not really a strong manifestational power. And I'm not saying that angelics can't manifest, because that would be rude, and I'm not the authority on any of this. I'm just explaining what I understand. But it's more like angelics, it's almost like having as little of a personal footprint here as possible, while knowing that you're still going to have a footprint here. And you still, as long as you're in a human body, in a human incarnation, you have requirements to be alive. And that it's, you need more than just your base level survival needs met. You also, like, having an optimized lifestyle is what allows us to be in a state of, like, energetic overflow that allows us to spin this field of light. So hopefully that makes sense. Whereas dragons are like fucking manifestors. Dragons are the other aspect. They're one and the same. It's two extreme sides of the same being. So the dragon is all the power, all of the ability to be a causal agent here, and the desire to be a causal agent, and like the focused, clear willpower. It's that like intense, mission-driven self. It's the self that can like manifest like a fucking bad ass, because there's so much power behind it and an absolute unwillingness to take shit or settle for nonsense. Like, it's the part of us that's like almost regal and demigod-like, or like royalty in that level of like certainty. Like, it's a question of worthiness doesn't even come up when your dragon is activated, where you're like unworthy. Can you repeat? I don't understand the question. Like, it doesn't even compute. It's just like, oh no, I am worthy. I'm having the thing. It's happening because I know how to do it, because I know how to manifest it. And it's like, it's hard to talk about it because manifestation, we've received, like, it had to come through in a certain way in order for us to have the prerequisite understanding of what manifestation is and all that stuff, and to understand our creator abilities. But I'm definitely not talking about like manifesting your dream life or like manifest like that. And also, there's nothing wrong with any of that. I'm just saying that the dragons are like, I hate to use this example because obviously if she wasn't always like owned by the dark cabal, she is now, but Oprah would be an example of a dragon energy that we would all know who Oprah is, but maybe it helps to understand. So again, and P.S., there are fallen angels and there are fallen dragons, and being a dragon it's a lot, because you have all that power, you have to be in absolute, utter, and total mastery of your ego. I guess that's the difference, is the angelic frequency, like, your ego disappears more and more and more. You get your baseline human needs and optimized life taken care of, and then outside of that, your ego, your energy goes towards spinning these fields of light and holding a resonance of total alignment to this, like, divine, to everything, in service to all of creation. Whereas the dragon is like the ego, but it's the exalted ego, but it can also be the fallen ego. And when the ego has so much power. Oh my God, the human ego, it's so powerful. And so, like there are a lot of fallen dragons. There are a lot of dragons that are here with all their power, and they're like, I don't give a shit about anybody else. Like, I am here for number one, and that is all. The dragons that I'm talking to are the ones who are like, I volunteer to hold this much power and hold it with integrity and be able to create and have a massive impact and influence on the world and do it from a place of integrity. I am here to amass an insane amount of wealth. Insane. And then hold and steward that wealth with integrity. And I've met some powerful dragons. Powerful. So that's what it feels like to me, the difference between the dragons and the angelics. And then the interesting thing about the dragons too is I feel several different ways that it plays out in people. Some people carry dragon energy. Like, I don't really know exactly what that means. It's like they're a human, but they carry dragon energy. Some people carry dragon codes. So I might be a dragon code keeper. I don't actually think I'm a dragon. I do think that you can be both. I don't actually think I'm a dragon. I think I carry the codes for dragons. Some people are dragon whisperers and dragon riders. I feel like that's me. I'm a dragon rider. I understand how to ride the dragon. And some people are the dragon. And also I gotta say, like, I'm at a point where I legitimately believe that dragons are fucking real. And they're like here and around us all the time, in different dimensions. There's like little mini dragons, like people have dragon spirit guides and shit. But also, like, essentially, I believe when I say that some people are dragons, that they are like a cell or a fractal of the consciousness of a much larger dragon that appears to be dead and petrified, and yet is just deeply asleep. And as those fractal pieces reassemble, its consciousness wakes more and more and more, and then that dragon is waking up. So I know this probably sounds crazy and like such a stretch to some people, and I'm fine. You don't have to believe me. This is just, a year plus of trying to make sense of all these things that have been coming through, and this is where I'm at with it. What else do I want to say? So you can be a dragon and an angelic at the same time, even though those are two extremes. It's like, it would be like feeling the two different parts of you. Like sometimes it's more of your angelic aspect that is taking the lead or stepping forward, so to speak, and you're in a more of a passive state where your ego dissolves and you are just all about basically like turning to face God, and just every part of your being is harmonizing and like harmonizing with God, and you are singing praise to God, but it's not from an organized religious perspective. It's like everything in your heart is like the oneness, the oneness, the oneness, the oneness, the oneness, but from a place of the absolute, like, it's unspeakable levels of love and truth and grace and freedom and charity and forgiveness and like redemption, salvation, all of those like most beautiful high vibrational frequencies. And then sometimes you'll feel your dragon take over, and your dragon is like, but I am here and I am a causal agent and I am meant to wield and hold this much power. I don't know, sometimes I'm like, maybe I am a dragon because I'm a fucking prolific creator. I don't know, guys. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. Because sometimes I can feel myself switch into that where I'm like, oh no, like I am fucking here to like create, but I still feel like it's all for the motivation of showing you guys how to do it. That's it. That's literally it. Like any money, any like badass, like forever, like gigantic mansion level house that I build in the future, anything like that is all just so I can show you how to do it. That's where the juice and the joy is for me. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm a dragon code keeper, a dragon rider. I don't know. But I do feel the dragon energy. I understand it. I know how to wield it and speak to it and bring it out. And I also know that, like, it's a huge responsibility for those of us that decided to take it on. Okay, I think that's it for my ramble. I am going to just check out the comments. There's just a couple. Kathleen, you said, are the transmissions always healing or informational or both? The light language transmissions, I think that they are both. Like, I think they always come with healing frequencies, because to me, when I'm allowing them to pass through me, it feels like the description I would make is like the living liquid like love frequency of divine consciousness flowing through me. That's maybe the best words I can put. It feels very fluid and liquidy and like flowing, and it feels like it's like pouring through me like a river, and it flows out through my vocal cords and my tongue, and it feels like the frequency is very like kind of golden white and sparkling. And so I think it's healing, but it also brings a lot of information, like recoding kind of stuff. And then Lara, you said, I don't think I'm a dragon, but perhaps a whisperer or a rider, a mutual respect or something. Yeah, I don't know. I'm right there with you, as obviously as I just shared. When I tune in, I don't see myself as the dragon. I see myself as the rider of the dragon, kind of like, and P.S., none of this is based on Game of Thrones. I haven't even watched House of Dragons, but I have read and watched all of Game of Thrones. So of course it influences, but none of it is the basis. I haven't watched it in over a year. Haven't read it in even longer. But when I tune in, I feel more resonance with Daenerys riding the dragons than being a dragon. So I'm probably a dragon rider. Anyhow, it's all a lot, but it's really cool. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell you the different ways that you can go deeper on all of this. I am remiss frequently. I frequently forget to do this. But there are 3 main ways that you can work with me this year. The first is already underway. It is the Heartstar Creator 12-month immersion. So this is for you to basically, like everything I'm saying about the chakras, like clear that shit out and activate them in the blueprint that they are supposed to be, so that we are functioning in accordance to the way that we were created to function, and completely optimizing ourselves, activating all 12 strands of DNA, talking about all 12 of the dimensions within, like, that, you know, are understandable and applicable to the human experience, and also like manifesting and powerfully creating. So that is already underway. We started at the end of January, but it's open enrollment, so you can join anytime. On April 1st, the price is going to go up, so the founding members price is still available. It's the best price that it will ever be, but it's a very, very, like, I'm pouring everything into it. It's 52 weeks of content. There's content every single week, and this is like the synthesis of everything that I've integrated through the entirety of my 20 plus year spiritual awakening. It's like, I'm just giving you the roadmap to completely fucking change your life in every magical way. The next way that you can go deeper on any of this is the Dragon Priestess Mastermind, which I just got the download last night, but I also have to open it up to the angelics, so it might need a new rename. I'm not sure. But it is just going deeper into all of this, like these extreme polarities, tapping into those levels of consciousness within ourselves, learning how to ride the dragon, be the dragon, learning how to be in the angelic frequency and spin those fields of light, how to channel light language, like whatever it is. Basically, it's the activation of our high-level magic, which means magic that, again, how do I even describe it? Think Elsa in Frozen. It's a magic that, like, you don't need spells. You do not need incantations. You do not need tools. You don't even need ceremonies. It is literally you. It is in you. Now, I'm not talking about like, oh, we're just all very special. Yes, we are. We're all very special. I mean magic. I actually mean magic that flows out of you as a, like, the default byproduct of your very being. And it is being awakened now, very intensely. And this is about owning it, honing it, learning how to flow it. It's about awakening the dragon within and aligning with the angelic within and stepping into our high priestess selves. So I carry the codes for priestesses. So this particular offering is open to priestesses. Heartstar Creator is open to everyone. And then the third way that you can work with me, which hasn't started, it will be starting in Q2 of this year, is the Code Keeper Mastermind. And it is for those of you that also, like, you carry, like, you know the code, you know the game code. You don't have to know all of it. You don't even have to understand it. You just carry a piece of the code. You understand, like, there's pieces of it that you understand. Basically what I know is we're supposed to come together. Now's the time. This year is the time. We are supposed to come together and reactivate the telepathic network so that we can share these codes with each other offline, like off the internet, but still be connected, because we are like the ground level. I don't know. It's like, you know, those like cool, do you remember that? You probably don't, because you're probably all way younger than me, but that movie that Angelina Jolie was in a long time ago called Hackers. It's kind of like that, like we're like these cool game hackers, and but we're inside the game. We came in the game, and now we have to recode the game from inside the game, if that makes sense. So we got to connect, we got to swap codes, we got to piece this puzzle together and reactivate the telepathic network so that we're not dependent on the internet to be able to do it. So if you're interested in that, I'll pop a link to join the waitlist in the comments, and I will pop a link to join those other two things in the comments or in the description of this video. But otherwise, thank you for joining me. I rambled on way longer than I meant to, of course, as always. Typical Amy. But thank you so much for being here, and I love you, and mwah, step into your power, dragon.